Layla Williams had always lived in a world of prestige and privilege. As the only daughter of Robert Williams, a powerful financial mogul, she had been raised in luxury, surrounded by people who either admired or envied her. Yet, despite the glamorous life she led, Layla had always craved something more, something real. She had seen firsthand how wealth could corrupt, how it could turn relationships into transactions and love into obligations. She wanted to find someone who would see her as more than just the heir to the Williams empire. That night at the gala, Layla felt an unusual sense of restlessness. The grand ballroom of the St. Regis Hotel was filled with New York's elite, a sea of tuxedos and designer gowns shimmering under the golden chandeliers. Conversations were polite but calculated, full of hidden agendas and veiled ambitions. Layla had attended hundreds of such events, and yet tonight, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. And then she saw him. Jason Barkley stood by the bar, a glass of bourbon in hand, looking both confident and completely at ease. He wasn't like the men she usually encountered, those whose last names carried weight in financial or political circles. He was an architect, someone who created rather than merely controlled. His sharp blue eyes locked onto hers from across the room, and for the first time in a long while, Layla felt a genuine spark of curiosity. Their conversation flowed effortlessly. Jason wasn't intimidated by her last name, nor did he try to impress her with stories of his own accomplishments. Instead, he asked her about things that mattered, her passions, her dreams, her frustrations with the world she had been born into. It was refreshing, intoxicating even. By the end of the night, Layla knew she wanted to see him again. And she did. Their relationship progressed quickly, defying the doubts of her friends and family. Rachel, her best friend since childhood, was particularly wary.
Just be careful, Layla.
Love can make us blind to things we don't want to see, Rachel had warned. Her parents were even more skeptical. Robert Williams was a man who valued power and legacy above all else, and he had envisioned a different kind of match for his daughter. An architect? He had scoffed when she first mentioned Jason. He doesn't understand our world. But Layla didn't care. She wasn't looking for someone who fit into their world. She was looking for someone who made her feel alive. And so, despite their concerns, she married Jason in a lavish ceremony at her family's estate, believing wholeheartedly that she had found the one person who would love her for who she truly was. Their honeymoon in Santorini was nothing short of magical. They spent their days exploring the island, drinking wine on sunlit terraces, and making love under the stars. Jason was everything Layla had hoped for, attentive, charming, endlessly passionate. In those early days, she felt as though she had escaped the confines of her old life and stepped into a world of adventure and romance. But when they returned home, small shifts in Jason's behavior began to appear. At first, it was subtle, an offhand comment about the way she spoke to the waiter at dinner, a disapproving glance when she chose an outfit he didn't like. He started voicing strong opinions about their household finances, insisting that as her husband, it was his responsibility to take care of things. "Your father controlled everything growing up, didn't he?" Jason had said one evening as they sat in their penthouse apartment overlooking the city. "I just want to make sure you don't have to worry about anything. You trust me, don't you?" Of course she did. She loved him. So she let him handle their accounts, believing it was simply his way of showing his commitment to their marriage. She ignored Rachel's growing concerns, brushing them off as paranoia. But soon, Jason's need for control became more pronounced. He insisted on knowing where she was at all times, calling her frequently throughout the day. He questioned her choices, subtly making her feel as though she was incapable of making good decisions on her own. "You don't need to work so hard, Layla," he told her one evening as she prepared for an important board meeting. "Why put yourself through all that stress? Let me take care of you." It sounded like love, like protection. But it was something else entirely. Layla first noticed the discrepancies in their finances when she attempted to make a routine purchase for a charity event she was organizing. Her card was declined. Confused, she logged into their shared account and was shocked to see large, unexplained withdrawals. Luxury items she hadn't purchased, investments she hadn't approved, her money was disappearing, and she had no idea where it was going. When she confronted Jason, he dismissed her concerns with a reassuring smile. "I've been making some investments for us, sweetheart. It's nothing to worry about." "But I should have known about them," she argued. "You were so busy with work, I didn't want to bother you. Trust me, everything I'm doing is for us." Layla wanted to believe him. She needed to believe him. But the unease in her stomach wouldn't subside. Over the next few weeks, Jason's control extended beyond their finances. He began dictating what she wore, preferring softer looks that made her seem more demure. He criticized how she spoke in meetings, making her second-guess herself. Slowly, he isolated her from her friends. One evening, Rachel called, asking if Layla wanted to meet for dinner. "I can't tonight," Layla said, glancing at Jason, who was watching her from across the room.
Again.
Rachel's voice was laced with concern.
Layla, is everything okay?
Of course, Layla forced a smile. Jason just likes spending time together. Rachel didn't sound convinced, and neither was Layla. As time passed, Jason's behavior escalated. He grew irritable, snapping at her over trivial things. His once affectionate words became laced with condescension. "You don't understand how these things work, Layla. That's why I'm handling it." She felt trapped in a reality she hadn't signed up for. The man she had once believed to be her escape had become her prison. Late one night, she stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, searching for the woman she used to be. She barely recognized herself. Something had to change. But deep down, she knew Jason wouldn't let her go easily. Layla's world began to shrink. The confident, ambitious woman who had once commanded boardrooms now second-guessed herself at every turn. Jason's control was a slow, insidious process, stripping away her autonomy one layer at a time until she was no longer sure where his influence ended and her own thoughts began. At work, her performance began to slip. Once a driving force behind the Williams Foundation's charitable initiatives, she now struggled to meet deadlines. Her once bold ideas seemed dull, lifeless. She found herself hesitating before speaking in meetings, fearing Jason's criticisms in the aftermath. He always found something to correct: her tone, her phrasing, her lack of consideration for how things appeared. "You sounded too aggressive," he remarked one evening as they sat in their penthouse living room. "People respect you more when you soften your approach." Layla clenched her jaw but said nothing. She had learned that arguing only made things worse. Rachel remained persistent, refusing to let their friendship die. She reached out regularly, inviting Layla for coffee, to weekend brunches, to the charity galas they used to attend together. But Jason always found a reason why Layla couldn't go. "You're exhausted, babe. Just rest," he would say, massaging her shoulders as if he were doing her a favor. Or more insidiously, "Rachel doesn't understand what a real marriage takes. That's why she's still single." It was easier to give in. To stop arguing. To let go of one more piece of herself. Then there was the money. Jason's financial control escalated beyond just handling their accounts. One day, while attempting to buy a birthday gift for her assistant, Layla's card was declined, again. Embarrassed, she paid in cash and immediately checked their account when she got home. The balance had dwindled even further, with massive amounts funneled into investments she had no knowledge of. "Jason," she confronted him that evening, voice trembling. "What is this? Where's the money going?" He didn't even look up from his laptop. "I'm making sure our future is secure." "You didn't ask me." "You don't need to worry about this," he cut her off. "You never cared about finances before."
Just let dem handle it.
She wanted to fight, to demand answers, but his voice was so calm, so rational. Maybe he was right. Maybe she was overreacting. But deep down, a part of her knew she wasn't. The night everything changed, Layla had been on edge all day. Something was gnawing at her, a suffocating weight she couldn't shake. Jason had been colder than usual, his patience wearing thin. She sensed it in the clipped way he spoke to her, the way his fingers drummed irritably against the table when she asked too many questions. Then, while searching for an old document in his study, she found the bank statements. Her hands trembled as she flipped through them. Transactions she didn't recognize, withdrawals she hadn't authorized. He had drained one of their joint accounts completely. Not just some of it, all of it. A cold sweat broke out along the back of her neck. When Jason came home that evening, she was waiting for him. The moment he stepped inside, she held up the bank statements. "Explain this." He barely glanced at them. "Layla, you're overreacting." "Overreacting." Her voice cracked. "You emptied our account, Jason. Where is the money?" His expression darkened. It's ours. Not yours. Ours. Her heart pounded against her ribs. That's not an answer. Jason exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples as though she were nothing more than an inconvenience. I invested it. For us. For our future.
You stole from me.
His gaze snapped to hers.
I'm your husband.
Everything I do is for you. For us. Don't you dare say this is for me, she hissed. Jason's face twisted in anger. You've been so focused on your career, on your father's legacy, that you forgot what being a wife means. I'm trying to take care of you, but you... Take care of me? Layla let out a bitter laugh. You've isolated me from my friends, undermined me, controlled every aspect of my life, and now you've stolen from me. This isn't love, Jason. It's control. And I won't live like this anymore.
Jasons Expression flickert. Schock, tensometing daka.
For the first time, she saw it clearly. The man she had loved was gone. Maybe he had never been real at all. For the rest of the night, she lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. Her mind raced through the past 2 years, the slow erosion of her freedom, the pieces of herself that had been chipped away one by one. She had to leave. But Jason wouldn't let her go easily. Layla moved carefully. She couldn't afford to make a mistake, not when Jason had already proven how easily he could twist reality in his favor. The next morning, while Jason was in a meeting, she called Rachel. Layla. Rachel's voice was wary but hopeful. I need your help, Layla whispered. Rachel didn't hesitate. Tell me where to meet you. They met at a quiet cafe downtown, where Layla finally let everything spill out. The financial control, the isolation, the fear that had been growing inside her for months. Rachel listened, her expression shifting from concern to fury. This isn't just a bad marriage, Layla. This is abuse. Layla swallowed. I know. Without hesitation, Rachel pulled out her phone and dialed a number. Monica Grant, she said when Layla gave her a questioning look. She's the best divorce attorney in the state.
Layla hesitated for only a moment before nodding.
Over the next few days, she followed Monica's advice to the letter. She quietly separated what was left of her finances, opening a new account in her name only. She gathered documents, bank statements, emails, anything that proved Jason's manipulation. She reached out to her father, finally admitting the truth. Robert Williams was a hard man, but when he heard what Jason had done, his fury was immediate. You should have come to me sooner, he said, voice tight with anger. But we'll handle this now. For the first time in years, Layla felt like she wasn't alone. She knew Jason would fight. He wouldn't let go without a battle. But she was ready. Layla knew she couldn't just walk away without confrontation. Jason needed to see that she was no longer afraid of him. She needed to take back her voice, to make it clear that his control over her was ending. And so, with Monica's guidance, she arranged to meet him at one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. Jason arrived late, as he always did, exuding confidence as he strode toward the table. He was dressed impeccably in a tailored suit, his expensive watch glinting under the ambient lighting. To anyone watching, he looked like the perfect husband, a man of status, charm, and sophistication. But Layla saw the man behind the mask. She remained calm as he sat across from her, flashing that familiar smirk. So what's this about, sweetheart? He asked, pouring himself a glass of wine. I assume you've come to your senses. Layla didn't respond immediately. Instead, she reached into her bag and placed a folder on the table. She pushed it toward him. I've filed for divorce. Jason froze mid-sip. For a moment he said nothing, his eyes locked on the folder as if it were something foreign, something impossible. Then slowly, he set down his glass and leaned back, his expression unreadable. You're not serious, he said, his voice low. I'm completely serious. Layla's voice was steady, unwavering. I've spoken to a lawyer. I've separated our finances. I will not let you control me any longer. Jason chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. Layla, this is ridiculous. You don't actually think you can win against me, do you? She met his gaze without flinching. I don't need to win, Jason. I just need to be free. His smirk faltered. His fingers curled around the stem of his wine glass, tightening. You're making a mistake. No, she said firmly. The mistake was ever believing you loved me. For a brief moment, something dark flashed in his eyes, anger, maybe even fear. But before he could say another word, the waiter arrived with dessert. A beautifully plated slice of cake was set in front of her, a final moment of calm before the inevitable storm. Jason reached for the folder, flipping through the papers. His jaw clenched.
You really think this is over?
Layla exhaled, as if releasing years of suffocation in a single breath.
It is.
Jason snapped. In a flash, he grabbed the plate and hurled it across the table. The cake hit her squarely in the chest, smearing frosting across her blouse. Gasps erupted around them as the entire restaurant fell into stunned silence.
Layla satere for a Moment, unmoving.
She could feel the sticky mess on her skin, the weight of 100 stares on her. Then slowly, she picked up her napkin and wiped her face. She stood, shoulders back, head high, and looked Jason in the eye. "Thank you," she said coolly, "for showing everyone exactly who you are." And with that, she turned and walked away, leaving Jason humiliated, fuming, and most importantly, powerless. Layla didn't look back as she stepped out of the restaurant and into the cool night air. Her heart was pounding, adrenaline coursing through her veins, but for the first time in years, she felt light. Free. Rachel was waiting for her outside, watching anxiously. The moment she saw the remnants of cake on Layla's blouse, her expression hardened. What did he do? Layla let out a breathless laugh. Exactly what I expected. Rachel wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Let's get you out of here. That night, Layla returned to her childhood home for the first time in years. As she stepped inside, she was overwhelmed by a rush of nostalgia, the scent of her mother's perfume lingering in the air, the familiar creak of the wooden floors. But most of all, the feeling of safety. Her father was waiting for her in the living room. When he saw her, his stern expression softened. "It's done." She nodded. He didn't say anything, but he opened his arms, and for the first time since she was a child, Layla let herself collapse into her father's embrace. For the next few days, she allowed herself to breathe, to rest. She slept without the weight of Jason's presence suffocating her. She woke up without checking her phone in fear of his messages. She sat with Rachel, laughing over coffee, realizing how much she had missed the simple joys of life. But she knew this was just the beginning. Jason wouldn't let go without a fight. And she was ready. Jason didn't waste time retaliating. Within days of receiving the divorce papers, he launched a full-scale counterattack. He painted himself as the victim, spinning a carefully crafted narrative to anyone who would listen. To the public, he was the devoted husband who had been blindsided by an ungrateful wife. To mutual acquaintances, he spread rumors that Layla had abandoned him, that she had become cold, distant, and obsessed with her career. Layla wasn't surprised. Jason had always known how to manipulate perception. But what he didn't anticipate was Monica Grant. Her attorney was relentless. She built a case so airtight that Jason had no room to maneuver. She gathered bank statements proving his financial manipulation, witness testimonies from Rachel and Layla's colleagues who had noticed the changes in her behavior, and even security footage from the restaurant where Jason had humiliated her. At their first legal meeting, Jason sat across from her, his arrogance still intact. "You won't win this," he murmured as they waited for their lawyers to sort through documents. Layla met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "Watch me."
The battle was ugly.
Jason fought to keep control, refusing to settle, demanding more than his fair share of their assets. He wanted to punish her for daring to leave. But Layla was done being afraid. She spoke with unwavering strength in court, detailing the years of financial and emotional abuse. She refused to let him twist the truth. She stood her ground against his manipulations. And slowly, Jason began to unravel. The man who had once held all the power was now exposed, his carefully maintained image crumbling under the weight of undeniable evidence. The judge saw through his lies. The public opinion shifted. Jason Daniels was losing. And for the first time in years, Layla Williams was winning. Layla sat in the courtroom, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The air was heavy with tension as Jason's legal team scrambled to maintain their defense, but the cracks in his carefully constructed facade were becoming more apparent with each passing day. Monica had been ruthless, presenting undeniable proof of his financial exploitation, emotional manipulation, and public outbursts. The footage from the restaurant, showing Jason's violent temper in action, had been a devastating blow to his credibility. Jason had once been so confident, so untouchable, but now he looked exhausted, his suit slightly rumpled, the arrogance in his eyes replaced by desperation. He had underestimated Layla. He had thought she would crumble under pressure, that she would give in to his threats, but she hadn't. When it was her turn to testify, Layla took a deep breath and stood, walking toward the witness stand with steady steps. She met Jason's gaze briefly before looking away, refusing to let him intimidate her. Monica's voice was calm but firm. "Dr. Williams, can you tell the court why you are seeking a divorce?" Layla lifted her chin. "Because my marriage was built on control, not love. Because my husband systematically isolated me from my friends, my family, and even myself. Because he used financial power to trap me, manipulated my emotions, and made me believe I was the problem when, in reality, he was the one pulling the strings." Jason scoffed, shaking his head, but Monica ignored him. "Can you describe how this affected you?" Layla swallowed. "I lost myself. I became someone I didn't recognize, someone afraid to speak, afraid to make decisions, afraid to leave. He made me doubt my own judgment, made me believe I was incapable of functioning without him." She turned to face the judge. "But I'm here today because I refuse to live in fear any longer." The courtroom was silent for a long moment. Even Jason's lawyer looked uncomfortable. Then, it was Jason's turn to speak. He straightened his tie, leaning forward with his hands clasped. "This is ridiculous," he said smoothly. "Layla is exaggerating. I supported her. I sacrificed for her. I gave her everything." Monica interjected before he could continue. "Mr. Barkley, are you saying that maxing out joint accounts, transferring money into your personal ventures without her knowledge, and isolating her from her family was your way of supporting her?" Jason's jaw tightened. He opened his mouth, but no words came out.
Layla exhaled, feeling something shift inside her.
For years, Jason had controlled every aspect of her life, but now here in this room, she was the one holding the power. And she wasn't letting it go. The final day of the trial arrived, and Layla felt a strange sense of calm wash over her as she entered the courthouse. Today, everything would be decided. Jason sat at his table, his fingers drumming anxiously against the polished wood. He had spent the last few weeks throwing everything he could at Layla, trying to break her resolve. He had sent veiled threats through his lawyer, hinted at exposing secrets that didn't exist, even tried to charm her one last time outside the courtroom. None of it had worked. When the judge finally spoke, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. "In light of the evidence presented, this court finds that Mr. Barkley engaged in financial misconduct and emotional abuse. Dr. Williams is granted a divorce with full financial separation. Furthermore, any assets that were transferred without her knowledge will be returned immediately. Mr. Barkley will have no further claim to her earnings or estate." A rush of relief flooded Layla's veins. She heard Monica let out a satisfied breath beside her. But Jason? Jason went completely still, his knuckles white against the arms of his chair. The judge continued. "Additionally, given the pattern of manipulation and control, Dr. Williams will retain full custody of her daughter, with limited and supervised visitation for Mr. Barkley." Jason shot up from his seat.
"This is absurd."
"She's my daughter too." The judge gave him a warning look. "Mr. Barkley, sit down." But Jason wasn't done. He turned to Layla, his voice lowering into a desperate whisper. "You can't do this. You can't just erase me from her life." Layla met his gaze, steady and unwavering.
"You are it yourself."
Jason clenched his fists, his perfect image shattered before the world. For the first time, he had lost, and Layla had won. When the gavel struck, finalizing the divorce, she let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. It was over. She was free. The sun was warm against Layla's skin as she sat at an outdoor cafe, sipping her coffee. It had been months since the trial ended, months since she had last spoken to Jason. And in that time, she had begun to rebuild. Her career was thriving again. Without Jason's suffocating influence, she had rediscovered her passion for medicine. She had taken on new cases, mentored younger doctors, and felt more confident in her abilities than ever before. Her relationship with her daughter had also strengthened. Without the constant tension of her toxic marriage, she had been able to truly be present, to love and nurture in a way she hadn't realized she was holding back before. Rachel sat across from her, grinning as she stirred her tea. "So how does it feel?" Layla tilted her head. "How does what feel?" Rachel gestured around them. "Freedom.
Bein you're en person again."
Layla thought for a moment before smiling. "It feels like breathing for the first time in years." She wasn't naive. She knew healing wasn't instant. There were still moments of doubt, still shadows of the past that crept in when she least expected them. But she also knew she was no longer the woman Jason had tried to mold her into. She was stronger now, wiser. And as she sat there, laughing with her best friend, feeling the sunlight on her skin, she realized something else. Her journey had never been about escaping Jason. It had been about finding herself. And finally, she had. As Layla walked along the bustling streets, the scent of fresh coffee and blooming flowers filled the air, mingling with the sounds of life moving forward. It felt symbolic, this new beginning, this newfound sense of self. The weight that had once pressed down on her shoulders was gone, replaced by a quiet strength she had fought so hard to reclaim. She had been through fire, endured betrayal, and had nearly lost herself in the process. But in the end, she had emerged not just intact, but stronger, wiser, and freer than she had ever been before. Jason had once been the center of her world, his influence shaping every aspect of her life. Now, he was nothing more than a closed chapter in a book she had outgrown. He could no longer define her, no longer hold power over her choices, her happiness, or her future. Most importantly, Layla had found herself again, the woman she had been before Jason, and the woman she had become despite him. She had rediscovered her passion, her independence, her laughter. She had reclaimed her voice, not just for herself, but for her daughter, ensuring that no cycle of control or fear would ever touch the next generation. As she sat at the cafe, watching the world unfold around her, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: peace. Her journey wasn't about finding love, nor was it about revenge. It was about something far greater. It was about freedom. And at long last, she was free. Thank you for watching and following Layla's journey to freedom. Her story is one of strength, resilience, and reclaiming the life she truly deserved. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you think, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories like this. Your support means the world, and every like, comment, and share helps bring more incredible stories to life. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. What part of Layla's journey resonated with you the most? Stay tuned for more compelling stories, and as always, thank you for watching.